Everyone, my name is Colin Harris. I'm the Executive Director of Take Me Outside. We're really excited for today's chat with Dr. Goodall, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you. Yesterday was Take Me Outside Day, and we had close to 400,000 students and teachers across the country head outdoors to help raise awareness about the importance of learning outside and just more generally spending more time outside. It's such an important message these days, and you help spread that message loud and clear. So thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Farheen, who is part of the Take Me Outside team, and she'll help guide us through the next hour.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you, Dr. Goodall, for joining us, and Charlotte as well. Hi, my name is Farheen. I'm part of the Take Me Outside team. So Take Me Outside is a not-for-profit organization across Canada. Our mission here is to encourage students and teachers to spend time outdoors and to have that time as a regular part of their everyday learning. I'm joining today from the traditional territories of the Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe people here in the Greater Toronto region. A quick orientation for those of you who just joining us, welcome. The chat function and the video and mic for all attendees will be turned off. Charlotte and Dr. Goodall will lead us through a Q&A with questions you submitted. So we're really excited for that. And then Charlotte will present on the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada. And then we'll close off with some prizes. One of the prizes is a Chimp Guardian adoption package for one lucky class. All right, so throughout this week to celebrate Take Me Outside Day, we've had various events focusing on different themes related to going outdoors. Today's theme is environmental education, for which outdoor learning is a very important part. Learning hands-on through the environment and nature is an experience we all need, but we don't always get. So as the saying goes, nature is our best teacher. And one of the best people who can really help drive home that message through their own experience in the outdoors is a very special guest who we have here with us today. 60 years ago, Jane Goodall first set foot on the shores of what is today Tanzania's Gombe National Park to begin her pioneering study of chimpanzee behavior. For 6 decades, her research has transformed scientific perceptions about the relationships between humans and animals. And now her mission has evolved and grown into a quest to inspire, empower, and motivate others to make the world a better place. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the founder of the Jane Goodall Institute and United Nations Messenger of Peace, Dr. Jane Goodall. I'm sure there's a round of applause going on around the country right now. Also here with us for this presentation is Charlotte from the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada, who will be discussing the JGI programs in schools across the country and specifically how you can get your school involved in these programs. So welcome, Charlotte and Dr. Goodall. I will now pass it over to you both to take it away with your brilliant words.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Farheen and Dr. Jane. It truly is so wonderful to have you here today. For everyone at home or in class, as Farheen mentioned earlier, my name is Charlotte Burke, and I'm the Roots and Shoots Manager at the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada. I am beyond thrilled to be your host for this discussion and Roots and Shoots presentation for Take Me Outside Day 2021. Dr. Jane, there are actually over 400,000 people participating in this year's event. How incredible is that? Well, we've got a lot of questions for you today, some of which are from the audience, so let's jump on in. In celebration of Take Me Outside Day 2021, participating classrooms spent some time this week learning about the importance of exploring, learning, and playing outside. So on that theme, what were your experiences like learning outside as a young girl, and how did that influence your career as an adult?
Well, the thing is, I was born loving animals. I don't know where it came from. People keep saying, what triggered it? I don't know. I was watching earthworms and wondering apparently how they walk without legs when I was 1.5 years old. And fortunately, I had a very supportive mother who didn't get mad at me because I put earthworms in bed with me, things like that. And so when I was growing up, there was no TV. You have to, it's hard for young people to comprehend that. No social media, nothing like that. So for me, it was books from which I could learn about animals, but most of all, outside. We've got a big garden here. I'm speaking to you from my childhood home, where I've been since the pandemic began. And we got a big garden. I used to spend hours out in the garden. I found a special tree, beech, who's still out there, much bigger now. And I used to take my homework up there. I used to take books up there. I used to take my secrets up there. I used to spend hours feeling closer to the birds and the sky. I used to spend hours watching a bird's nest, getting them used to me so that I could see the eggs hatch and the parents feed the babies and the babies take their first flight. I kept caterpillars and watched them eat, grow big, form cocoons or pupa, and then emerge as butterflies. So my entire childhood was learning outside, and I so understand the importance of this outside learning. Also, the first school I went to, we had nature walks every single week.
I absolutely love that. And I think that nature walks are so important. And I think that's perfectly on theme with what we're talking about today and the importance of getting outside. That's amazing. And I think it's all a lot of it is curiosity driven as well, which is incredible and something we certainly encourage all youth is to follow their curiosity and learn more about the outdoors. Your education has largely happened in the field experientially. And of course, certainly there's a time and place for students learning in a structured environment at school and in their desks. But can our students' learning shift beyond four walls and a desk?
I think it must. I think it's desperately important. I've seen the impact that it makes. And I'll never forget the first time we brought groups of our youth program, Roots and Shoots, together from around America. We were asked if we would include a group of local children. And it was a very impoverished area. The children were African American, and the leader was 18 years old. And he was quite hostile. We were a bit upset that we just had to, include this group. But when we took them on the river, and this young man used a net and scooped little things out of the water, his expression changed. He'd never seen anything like this before. He was absolutely amazed. And we took him on a boat and we passed the nest of a swan with her cygnets. And he changed so much that whereas he started rather hostile and he didn't want to be there any more than we were, kind of worried about him being there, he then invited me back. And my schedule wasn't so packed in those days. So he took me to 3 local schools and we started our youth program, Roots and Shoots, there. So learning outside can change children's lives. It changed mine, it changed his, it changes so many.
Absolutely. And I think one of the big teachers from this pandemic we've experienced is how getting outdoors and spending time in nature is so connected to our mental health and well-being and makes us such happier individuals. So I could not agree more with you. We're going to pivot now to focus a little bit more on the incredible work that you've done with chimps, which has spanned over many years. What lessons can humans learn from chimpanzees?
Well, when I began, it was really that, we call it ethology now, the study of behavior. And animal behavior was only being studied in captivity. And when I decided to go to Africa and live with animals and write books about them, I was 10 years old. There was no thought of being a scientist. I mean, women were not that sort of scientists back then. It was only men who did adventurous things like going and living with wild animals. But again, I had this amazing supportive mother, and her message is good today for children around the world, particularly in disadvantaged communities. She simply said, Jane, if you really want to do something like this, you're going to have to work awfully hard, take advantage of every opportunity. And if you don't give up, you may find a way. And this is what I've said to young people around the world. And so many have said to me, Jane, I want to thank you because you taught me that because you did it, I can do it too. So right from the beginning, when I was 10, I knew what I wanted to do, and lots of young people don't. But I was fortunate. I did know, and I did manage to get there. And it was not my goal to study chimpanzees. I mean, they were exotic. Nobody had studied them in the wild. Nobody knew anything much about them. Few captive studies. And I was fortunate to hear about and then meet Dr. Louis Leakey, famous paleontologist, anthropologist. And it was he who offered me the opportunity to go and live not with just any animal, the one most like us, the chimpanzee. Well, it took 4 months before they stopped running away from me. They're very conservative. But finally, I gained their trust and I was able to start documenting their behavior, which is so like ours. So what I learned was, yes, Lewis was surely right when he reckoned that about 6 million years ago, there was an ape-like, human-like creature from which chimpanzees on the one hand, humans on the other, have evolved. And the one thing that really stands out, I mean, yes, they behave like us in so many ways. They even have a kind of primitive war, but they also have love, compassion, and altruism. Males compete for dominance, swaggering, bristling, looking as fierce and intimidating as they possibly can, just like some human male politicians. I hate to say it, but a few female politicians too. And the bonds between mothers and their family, not just mother and infant, but going up to mothers with their adult sons and daughters. And gestures like kissing, embracing, holding hands, patting on the back. I mean, all of these are so similar to us. But it enables you to stand back and say, yes, they're so like us. We share 98.7% of our DNA with them even, but we're different. What's the big difference? That's what I was and then able to determine. The big difference, the explosive development of our intellect. And, I mean, I think right now you've got a full moon out there or close to a full moon. And I would encourage every child listening, if you are lucky enough to have clear skies and you can look up at that moon, just feel that wonder and awe when you think, humans walked up there. Today it's taken for granted. Yeah, there was a moon landing. I mean, we even got rockets going to Mars. But when I first saw that moon landing, it was science fiction come true. And I look up at that moon and I feel that same wonder and awe. Wow, people walked up there on that moon. We forget wonder and awe. We just take things for granted. We have to learn not to take, we have to learn to think about what we've done with amazement. And so this big difference between us, chimps, and other animals, I think personally it was in part anyway triggered by the fact that we developed this way. We're communicating with each other, language, with words. And for the first time, we could teach our children about things that weren't there, whereas the chimpanzee children, they learn by observing and imitating. Language enabled us to learn lessons from the distant past, to make plans for the distant future. Above all, to bring people together from different lifestyles to try and find problems to solutions.
That was beautiful. There were so many pieces of information and ideas and advice and lessons that you've learned. And I think one that really spoke to me is the power of community and the importance of not taking this world that we have for granted. So thank you so much for sharing those insights. The next question we have is from the Edmund Partridge School, grade 7 class from Winnipeg, Manitoba. And they would like to know, what were some of your favorite moments with chimpanzees?
It's rather difficult after so many years, but clearly the first moment when chimpanzees who'd been running away from me for 4 months, I only had money for 6 months, and I came by mistake too close. I'd seen this group on the other side of a steep ravine, and I thought, if I can get to that tree, I'll be able to be not too close, and I'll be relatively concealed and be able to watch them. But I made a mistake, and I got too close. So I was waiting for them to run away as usual. They looked at me, and they went back to grooming each other. And it was the most amazing moment. It was etched on my mind forever. But then there were other moments, like seeing David Greybeard using pieces of grass and leafy twigs with the leaves peeled off to use as tools to fish for termites. There was the moment when old Flo, the matriarch, had been really afraid of me, but when she gained trust to such an extent that she allowed her little 5-month-old infant Flint to come right up to me. She kept a hand around him. She had a worried expression on her face, but she let him come, and he reached out and touched my nose, looking up with those big, wide eyes. Wonder. Those memories are etched on my mind forever.
That's beautiful. And it seems like Flo had a little bit of his own chimpanzee discovery, learning about how close chimpanzees were to humans by touching your nose that way. I love that. And I love the story of David Greybeard as well. And on the power of chimpanzees and how much you've been able to learn from them and how close we are related to them. We have a question here from the grade 4-5 class out of Milton, Ontario, and they would like to know, if chimpanzees went extinct, how would this affect the world and their ecosystems? And what are some actions that students can take to stop this from happening in our own backyards?
Well, first of all, chimpanzees are known as great gardeners because their main food, or the food they like best, are fruits. And so they eat these fruits, and a lot of the seeds and stones go through their digestive tracts and come out in their poo. And this is because they travel quite long distances. It's helping to spread these seeds throughout the forest for regeneration purposes. And of course, the dung that surrounds the seed is good to fertilize it. So they're great gardeners. And what can we do to save them? Well, of course, the Jane Goodall Institute is working really, really hard with the local people in several different African countries to help save the chimps from extinction, to help protect their habitat. And what you can do in Canada is you can become a chimpanzee guardian, and that means it can help us look after the orphan chimps whose mothers have been killed in the bushmeat industry. That's the commercial hunting of wild animals for food. And unfortunately, in some African countries, chimpanzee meat is prized. So because it's illegal, the government will allow us to confiscate the infants, and then we have to care for them in sanctuaries. But you can also, within the Roots and Shoots program, learn more about the situation. And maybe there will be occasions when you can write to your legislators. Maybe you can think about one day coming out to help in the study, to learn more about chimps and to help protect their environment.
Absolutely. And on the note of Roots and Shoots, you often talk about the power of young people and how it inspires you. And so after creating this program of Roots and Shoots, which is celebrating its 30th year this year, that helps youth take action in their communities, we would love to hear more about the Roots and Shoots program from your perspective.
Well, it was when I had left Gombe to travel around the world to talk to people about the problems faced by the chimpanzees, the destruction of the forest, the bushmeat trade, and so on. And I was then traveling around the world talking about this, and I was meeting so many young people who seemed to have lost hope. And when I talked to them, and these were in different continents, they all said more or less the same. Well, we feel like this, which was depressed or angry or just mostly actually just apathetic, not seeming to care. We feel this way because you've harmed our future and there's nothing we can do about it. Well, if any of the young people listening today feel that older generations have harmed your future, you are absolutely right. We haven't just harmed it, we've been stealing it from you. We still are. But when the young people said to me, there's nothing we can do about it, I thought, no, that's not true. We've still got a window of time when we can turn things around. And so this little group that came to me in Dar es Salaam, there were 12 high school students from 8 different high schools. And they came to ask my advice about the concerns they had about what was going on around them. And it wasn't just poaching of wildlife. It wasn't just destruction of environment, but it was things like worrying about street children with no homes, worrying about the homeless dogs who had nowhere to go and were being cruelly treated. So I told these 12 students, okay, go and find your friends. We had a meeting. And at that meeting, Roots and Shoots was born, February 1991. And we decided that the main message would be every single individual matters. Every single individual makes an impact every single day. And we get to choose what sort of impact we make. And we decided, because everything was interrelated, that every Roots and Shoots group would choose, not us, not top down. They would choose a project to help animals, a project to help people, and a project to help the environment, because it's all interrelated. And of course, in the Roots and Shoots today, which is now in over 60 countries and has members in kindergarten, even some preschoolers, university, and everything in between, these groups are growing all the time, and they somehow, as they engage on projects which they choose, they are somehow learning that much more important than the color of our skin, our culture, our language, our religion, is the fact we're all human beings. We all laugh, we all cry. If we fall, we bleed, and our blood is the same. So we're learning, the young people are learning, and they remember it into adult life, that we are one human family.
Absolutely. That's incredible. And, I love the story about how Roots and Shoots has come together. And I think the amazing thing about this program is that it is entirely youth led. They get to determine where they want to have an impact based on what they know about their community. And I really think that's something so special. In reflecting on how Roots and Shoots is currently in its 30th year, I can't imagine all of the incredible projects you've seen over that time. Is there a particular Roots and Shoots project that comes to mind that has inspired you?
Well, there's one which is actually more symbolic than anything else, but I love it just because it's symbolic. It was the first group to be formed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we have our office in Goma, which is where there's oil, it's a mineral rich area. So you have groups of militia, and they fight each other, and there's often sounds of rifle fire and bombs going off as different militia compete to get the minerals. It's not a safe place. But anyway, this first little group of Roots and Shoots, under the mentorship of Dario, there were about 15 of them, I think. They were roughly 10 to 14. And they decided as their first project, they wanted to plant trees on what was once a sacred hill, and it had been forested, but now most of the trees had gone. So they wanted to put the trees back. Well, it was actually a sort of more or less impossible thing for them to do, but Dario didn't want to subdue them and, crush their enthusiasm. So he got some saplings donated by a forester friend of his, but then he had to go to the resident militia to get permission. So the colonel said, well, it's a very stupid idea. They obviously can't do it, these little children, but well, I suppose it's not harmless, not harmful, but I'll have to send soldiers with you. So now you imagine, long hot trek, little kids, 15 of them, carrying their little saplings, and I suppose something to dig with. With them are 4 big, burly Congolese soldiers with AK-47 rifles over their shoulder. They get there, they're tired, and they start trying to dig holes. The ground's very hard. And the youngest is a little girl of about 8. She begins to cry. She can't make the hole to put her tree in. And after about 10 minutes, one of the soldiers leans his gun against a tree and goes to help her. And within the next 10 minutes, all the soldiers had laid aside their guns and they were helping the children plant trees. And to me, that is a very, very symbolic story because it illustrates what Roots and Shoots is trying to do, to respect each other, to reduce violence and warfare, to live in a community of peace and harmony with each other and with the natural world.
Dr. Jane, I'm holding back tears over here. That was an incredible story, and I think such a testament to the indomitable human spirit that you always talk about. Well, before we pass the mic back to Farheen to say goodbye to you and jump into the Roots and Shoots presentation, is there anything else you'd like to say to the classes with us today?
Well, I'd just like to remind you all that you, as an individual, and I'm talking to each one of you now, you make a difference every day. And you need to think about that. When you go to bed tonight, can you look back over the day and say, well, I think I made things a little bit better? Or maybe that won't be true. But you know, a lot of people feel hopeless and helpless because I'm just one person. The problems of the world are huge. There's nothing I can do. And so people fall into apathy and do nothing. And that's doom for the future. So the point is that though you may feel that picking up plastic or planting a tree or helping a stray animal or whatever it is doesn't really matter because it's such a small little thing, it's not just you. It's young people all over the world who are doing these kind of projects. So that this saying, which I hear all the time, think globally, act locally, should be the other way around. Act locally. Know that other people around the world are also acting locally, and then you all dare think globally. That together we are making this a better world. And that's the last word that I would like to say.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jane. And with that, we will pass it back to Farheen. And Colin, thank you so much for having us.
Dr. Goodall, thanks so much. Thanks for being with us today, and you've given us a lot to think about. I really love sort of your use of storytelling to sort of make a point, and I think the students listening today and the teachers have a lot to reflect on. So thank you.
Now, maybe before I cut off to go to my next Zoom meeting, maybe I should give the chimpanzee distance greeting to everyone. And then later on, you can all practice it. But we are all at a distance. We're talking from different places. Chimpanzees travel around in small groups. The community splits up. They want to keep contact with each other. So they have this distance call, which is and each one has his or her own individual call. So when you hear that sound, you know who's there, and you can find friends that you may have lost contact with. So that was me, that was Jane. And with that sound, I will say goodbye to you all.